So over the last couple of years, I've created quite a few thumbnails. And when you look at all of them together, they may seem like there's no sort of structure behind them. There's just big, bold words and a whole bunch of different colors. You may think your channel looks very untidy and not sort of unified, but what you got to think of is you want your video to stand out within the search results. Not necessarily your channel, but in the search results. So let's take an example here. Let's say we want to create a new video for PHP 7 tutorials and you want to create a thumbnail for it. So let's search for PHP 7 tutorial. So I've already done that in YouTube, and you can see that there is a whole bunch of different blues being used. There's big bold PHP logos, there's some elephants, there's a lot of text. So there is some custom thumbnails, some people didn't bother, like down here, and so it's a mixture. But the common themes is big PHP logo, big sevens, blue. So what you want to do is stand out from the crowd here, and the first thing you need to consider is color. Color sets you apart. So I'd like to go to color.adobe.com. So Adobe Color CC, in other words. And on the left here, there's color rule, and I like to click on complementary first and then triad. So there's various colors here. If we look at complementary, I already have the sort of blues we expect to see here. So those are the kind of blues that we've been seeing on the left here in the YouTube search results for PHP 7. Now, on the right-hand side, there's these weird yellowy colors that you may not think of as first, but they really stand out from the blue. You can even go to triad, and of course you have the blues over here, and then greens, and maybe a really odd shade of red, orange. They sort of stand out too. And this is how I like to do it. So they are far away as possible from the blues on the color wheel. Now, before we continue to use that color, let me explain a little bit about my custom template. Now, I have a custom template set up, and just to double check the resolution here, the image or the canvas size in pixels is 1280 by 720. So that is the size, the recommended size for YouTube thumbnails. Width 1280, height 720. So let's take our color and we'll make a background layer. Select the bucket, and that's very clear. It's very you can read template part 1. The white text stands out from that mustardy background. It's very simple, very easy, very effective. But in terms of professionalism, you want to sort of create a thumbnail that it looks that someone's put a lot of effort into it. So they're very proud of their thumbnail, they're very proud of their video, and it usually screams that the creator puts effort into his product as a whole. So what can we do to make this a little bit better? Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is another website. The website is called unsplash.com. At the time of recording this video, the images on this website are free to use, so they're really high res, so go ahead and use it. Okay, so let's search for computer. So there's a bunch of different computers here. I mean, you can go for what you want, but try to keep it as related to the topic. So in our terms, PHP 7, I mean, we could go for this code one. I'm going to go for this mug since I'm having coffee and sitting at the computer now looking at PHP stuff. So I think this is kind of appropriate. Click the download button. Okay, so now we don't need that. Back to Photoshop. And I'm just going to drag the new image into Photoshop. Sorry, I had that in my download folder to the left. You can't see it. And I'm going to put it behind my background. Now, I want to keep this yellowy effect, or this at least this tinge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the blending mode, have the background layer selected, go to the blending mode, and go down to first color burn. So you can see the yellow is still there, and I'm going to cycle through some. And I think I always tend to go for soft lights. Overlay, or yeah, I think soft light will go for that. Now you can see the text is maybe not as clear as it can be. So what you can do is select your background layer or the image, and let's go to adjustments over here. And what we're going to look for is hue saturation. Now, I'm not the best in terms of color blending, stuff like this, but all I'm trying to do is make sure my font is as legible as possible. And to do that, I tend to make the background a little bit darker. So we do have that mustardy color, we do have the image, and we do have legible font overlaid. So maybe we can up the saturation and maybe bring that back down a bit. There seems to be some green creeping in the top left. So I'm happy with that. So you can see we have something that looks at least a little bit more professional than the existing thumbnails in the search results. So now let's take a look at what else there is to do. In the top left here, you notice that I have my logo. Now, why this is very important is to create some sort of consistency between your videos. If you're creating a whole bunch of Laravel videos and a user loves your Laravel videos, if they're searching for view composers, or if they're searching for how to create an artisan command, you know, if they watched your video first, the next time they search for it, if they see that logo, there would be that identity, your brand identity from video to video. So if they liked your first one, they're more than likely to click on your next one. So that's why it's very important to keep some sort of underlying common theme. So in my case, I have a brand logo to the top left. I have bold white fonts in the middle or aligned to the left with an image or some sort of color in the background. So that's sort of what I like to do. Now let's address font. You'll notice I'm using something, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, called Burbus Noir. You can find it on fontsquirrel.com. There's a bunch of fonts there at the time of recording this video. There's commercially free fonts available there, and you can get one of these. I think it's really good, it's really bold, really easy to read. It's not too bold where the letters are too thick, but it's just perfect, and that's how I like to keep it. And let's take a look at this effects that I got applied. They're very, very subtle, and it's a drop shadow. So just to give it that sort of distinctiveness from the background. And if you want to, I know you may not be able to see this, but the opacity is set at 35%, distance is 5 pixels, spread is 0, and size is 7. You can play around with that to make sure you get it the way you want it, but my advice is subtle is better. So let's get rid of that. Now let's look at the actual text. We have template, obviously that's going to change. We're going to change that to PHP 7 tutorial. Okay. And below, just notice that I have part 1 in my template. Now in most cases, my videos are standalone videos. But if you are making, let's say, new features, let's say this is the let's say that this is the first part of your PHP 7 journey. You want to introduce some new features. It's always good to do part 1, because if you do a second video, you can always just add it on, so part 2. So people are more likely to know that, hey, there's going to be a lot of information here. There's probably a series I should be more involved. Instead, you know, if you take that out and you do have other parts, people might not even think that there are other parts available, and you will lose those viewers. Okay, so in this case, let's go with the fact that we are going to do another part. So like part 2, part 3. So let's keep part 1 there. Notice it's much smaller because it's not as important as the big bold title. But let's take a look at this text again. We have PHP 7 tutorial. Now we know the user is going to be searching for PHP 7 tutorial. But what exactly is your tutorial going to be about? Because obviously you can't encompass everything about PHP 7 into one tutorial. So let's go back to YouTube. We have PHP 7 tutorial. So maybe who are the type of people who are going to search for PHP 7 tutorial? Obviously people who are interested in PHP 7, but most likely new to PHP 7. So if you look at some of the stuff here, some of the titles, we have new features, new features. So that's one of the first things that you would do. So especially in a part 1. So let's go here. So your title, just remember your title of your video is going to be PHP 7 tutorial part 1 new features. So you don't have to keep PHP 7 tutorial in here because they're going to know it's in the title, it's what they searched for. So I'd like to do something along these lines, new features. And I'm just going to go end, shift home, and I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller. Okay, so PHP 7 new features, that's looking a little bit too long. What we can do is delete that, and then we just have new features part 1. Now I think I'm going to make that a little bit larger. Instead of doing the actual text, I'm going to do Control T, hold Alt and scroll out, click back, then do Alt and Shift and just increase the text. Go back to my move tool, just bring that down a bit. And then just to make sure that my text is actually centered, I'm just going to bring these back in. Okay, double click the magnifying glass, and there we go. So new features part 1. So the next thing you should do is, it's a little bit overkill, but it's always good to take a look at what this is going to look like in the search results. So let's go to YouTube again, and I'm just going to hit Alt and print screen, and that's going to capture the window. I'm going to go back to Photoshop, do Control N, and just so you can see it here, there's clipboard. So when you open clipboard, it's obviously going to create a canvas the size of whatever you have on your clipboard. And now you're going to do Control V, and there you go. So you have the search results here. Next, we're going to go back to template. Let's save this out. There is better ways of doing this for, just to be quick. I'm just going to do that. Save it to my downloads folder. Or did I save it to my downloads folder? I don't think so. Just go downloads, JPEG, and let's call it temp. Hit save. Okay. Right, I'm just going to drag this in. Hold shift to decrease. And I'm just going to hold Alt and scroll. Zoom in, bring that with the arrow keys, there we go. Shift, bring this down. Okay, double hit the magnifying glass. So just gonna close that for now. So this is what our web page is gonna look like. So what do you think? Does that stand out enough? There's completely different color to the rest. So straight away that does stand out. You have your brand identity, new features that actually doesn't look quite centered. I'm gonna make sure that's centered. And part 1, so people know there's more parts to come with it. So maybe they'll subscribe to your channel just in case they're looking for the next part if it's not available. So I think that's quite effective. You can always play around with this. Maybe we can go and do part 1 a little bit smaller. Let's do that. And just decrease the size here between both lines. It's still a bit off for some reason. There we go, that's it. It was just a blank space there. And if you really felt that, okay, I don't want that background, you can try it without it. So it is legible, in fact extremely legible. Go to JPEG, go downloads, just save it over temp. Remember, when you import into Photoshop, it doesn't matter if you overwrite the file on the outside if you don't care about it. Just going to drag this in. We have new features. And there we go. So that's obviously very effective as well. I just think it looks not too professional. I've tried it before and I didn't like it. I think the previous one works a lot better. If we can just get it up. Close that, and there we go. It shows there's some sort of level of professionalism. Now I know that people may not like this because, it's subjective. This look of a thumbnail is subjective, but there's a lot of key things that need to stay the same. One is the color. You need to make sure people can read the fonts. You need to make sure that you have some sort of brand identity there. And if you need to, add the part 1 or part 2. Those are the tips I can give you for creating a thumbnail. Just remember to hit that like and subscribe button, guys.